Hello viewers, finally we have a combination that has never appeared before on Gran Turismo 7. Yes, that's right, Daily Race C, the Nürburgring Nordschleife in Group 1 cars. And to be honest, I don't think Gran Turismo 7 players are going to be ready for this one. Now, Group 3 cars are normally the fastest cars to be raced around the Nürburgring, but Group 1 cars are over a minute faster. It's quite a big difference. And so when I jumped into this very first race, I was expecting things to go south very quickly. Let's see if that is going to be the case. Ahead of us, 3 laps of the Nürburgring Nordschleife 24-hour layout in the Group 1 machinery for the first ever time. On the brakes we go. Take a look at the car behind, just driving straight on into a right-hander, which I can tell you is suboptimal. Anyway, on the exit here, we've got a second batch of misdemeanors with a car facing backwards, a car on the grass. I get re-overtaken by the Spaniard as we continue to do battle win towards turn 3 with the Portuguese driver there getting bundled wide. And on the exit here we've got a couple of cars going very wide as well. So we're going to gain further positions down the hill towards the hairpin as we can take a look at the cars here in the radar once again, going straight on at the hairpin as we're going to try and pull away up the hill. Quite a tricky combination to get used to this. Group 1 cars, very, very quick, of course, around here. It feels very, very fast, and we get absolutely dive bombed onto the left-hander, onto the Nordschleife, and this is really where the fun properly begins. On such a narrow circuit, it's not going to be easy to overtake, and we've already had quite our fair share of carnage on the Grand Prix section, and to be fair, around that part of the track, that's what I'd expect the best part to be, as it's a bit wider, and we have seen faster cars go around there. But the Nordschleife is a very different kettle of fish, as this Spaniard cuts across at the last moment, and to be honest, this was just shocking driving. And we're going to both head into the gravel, lose a bunch of positions. They're going to have to slow down and let him go back through. That was pretty awful, it must be said. And we're going to push on a little bit later. Down the foxhole, we're going to get a yellow flag here, which is little surprise in these cars, as they're actually really not that easy to drive, especially on power. Very easy to lose control of the car. And I think it's fair to say that pretty much everyone has their certain references for braking and for speed. But this combination really throws all of that in the bin, and you have to really relearn the circuit entirely. We move up into 7th place after everyone goes for their pit stop, or a lot of people go for their pit stop at the end of lap 1. Going past this guy into 6th place. We're going to take our pit stop at the end of lap 2 instead. And it's this section here after Hoa Acht where you really begin to realise just how capable this car is around here. And I think it would be quite ridiculous with this race actually happening in reality. I'm sure many of you have seen the Porsche 919 Evo lap around here, which is probably even quicker than most Group 1 cars, and that was just absolutely bonkers. I wouldn't even want to imagine what it would be like to race for real around here. Anyway, I came out of the pit lane in 9th, managing actually to catch up with our old rival who we actually had a little battle with at the very beginning of the race, going past him there. However, into Galgenkopf at the end of the lap, just carrying a little bit too much speed, grazing off of barrier, and I knew at this point that this would put me in big imminent danger, as the car behind would be firmly in the slipstream and there'd be nothing I can do about it. And so I had a golden opportunity to gain position. I threw it away by making the mistake as the guy goes back on the slipstream down the straight. There's a yellow flag here. It's not going to be enough for the 8th position, but we're going to take that first race as very much a learning race before we put on the coveted Ferrari livery on an Audi, which is one of the most cursed things you can do, as we then set a better qualifying time. Now obviously I went from the back in that first race, and it's always a good idea to try to set some times here to try to move up the order, of course. Also just to learn the circuit, get a bit more familiar with the gear choices and that kind of thing. and you really begin to realise just how capable this car is. Look at this, just flat out through this left-hander, which in a Group 3 car is definitely not flat out. Would definitely require a lift through that corner like that. First lap time a 7:06, but I would say sub 7 is very much possible for me after a bit more practice. Like this, grazing off the wall. Now, into the chicane at the end of the Grand Prix loop. Look at this, you can just carry so much speed when you get it right. I think the minimum speed there was above 110 miles an hour, which is absolutely bonkers and unheard of in the world of Gran Turismo. We just have not seen speeds like that through that corner. So plenty of gaining on this lap as we move up to a 7:04. Still, again, I think we can improve upon that. Well, that improved my grid position up into 6th place for this one. And this was actually a really enjoyable race. As we head away, P6 on the grid, another 3 laps ahead of us. And this one actually turned out to be a really rather good one. I enjoyed this one. Down in towards turn 1, just covering the narrow line, hitting the apex, almost spinning out there, which is actually remarkably easy to do in this car. Looking around the outside of the Portuguese driver, and it's actually going to happen here. He leaves the space, brakes quite early, and we can capitalise upon that by going around the outside into turn number 3. Heading down the hill, not the best exit. I'm just going to have to cover off the Swiss driver behind into the hairpin at the bottom to consolidate 5th place. Not bad at all. And very quickly, guys, please do help me get to 1 million subscribers. I'm almost there, 986,000 at the moment. I do appreciate any extra sub as we are very, very close now. But in this race, just settling in and trying to keep up with the leading pack there. 3 seconds off the lead, which actually isn't too bad. If we started 6th place, and there's definitely a margin for mistakes and penalties and errors in the pack ahead. So let's just keep pushing and see what we can achieve here. Onto the Nordschleife. This is where the real fun begins in this car, and I think I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board, back to the qualifying, to really hone my my pace around here. I think all of my references, as I say, from now doing real life so many years, or for 3 years now, I've done over 200 laps in real life around this circuit, and none of them have really prepared me for this, because everything is just so much faster and you can brake so much later. Is actually just quite ridiculous. And sometimes I would actually say that having done so many real life laps sometimes can count against you, because you're so used to doing things in a certain way, and you kind of have to unlearn those things in this context here. Down the back straight towards Swedenkreuz, and then into Arenberg here. This medium right-hander at the far end of the circuit. Heading down the hill towards the foxhole, and you know, ridiculous speeds here, nearly 190 miles an hour as we hit the bottom of the hill, which is just unthinkable. And then into the Adenauer 4 section here, carrying a good amount of speed. We're actually only 2.2 seconds off the lead here, as we get a really good launch off the turn. The car in front not quite getting the gearing right, and not quite getting the traction. Side by side through Metzgersfeld 1, and it gives me the space, and I could have easily been run wide there. We complete a pretty brilliant overtake there, I think it's fair to say, and moving up into 4th place. Still just 2.4 off the lead, and this kind of sequence here, this was a part of the track which I really was struggling with. This right-hander just, the car just did not want to turn in, and we surrender a couple of tenths quite quickly there as we head round Niki Lauda curve into Bergwerk. Again, another quite tricky corner, this one, but very much a crucial one, as it leads out onto this very long uphill section towards the carousel. Now, I definitely don't have the slipstream of the Hyundai in front. Fair play to this guy in front for not using the Audi R18. There are some other options out there which are not too slow. I'm going to cover the left-hand side here as the car behind is catching up. But he goes for the bump draft, so we want to work together. That's great. We'll take that for the time being. As we fly through Mutt curve, flat out through that turn. And again, it's really crazy to even visualize that. even consider that as an option, but it is. Now we go very, very deep there, and we're going to surrender the position, unfortunately. So just, you know, my lack of practice here, I think, is just showing the pace is pretty good in this race. Just a couple of small mistakes there, just beginning to creep in, as we'd probably expect. We're really trying to push on the limit against these guys who have got some good pace. Now this sequence of the circuit, really, really fun towards the end of the lap. Very, very high speed indeed, and you know, this kind of car with lots of aero that it has is super fun. Pushing towards the end of the lap, 2.5 the gap to the lead, so it hasn't really increased too much. It's been pretty much the same for the entirety of the lap, fluctuating slightly but not a huge amount. Now coming up towards the end here, we're going to really carry a lot of speed up against the Belgian driver in front. Look at this, through the corner at the end of the lap, just carrying a good amount of speed, coming out in third gear. He's going to drop into the pit lane, as is the Italian in front, and that therefore promotes me for the time being into third. We are of course going to do our pit stop at the end of this lap instead, and so this one needs to be a good lap. With the top two very close, we need them to ideally start battling so we can just get into the slipstream. But this one is a really close race. It's quite a hard one, I would say, because you really are having to push, and the car on traction, especially on the exit of the corners, is quite tricky. With Levicius now actually getting a penalty there, 0.5, presumably for some track limits violation just a few moments ago. And so we really need to ideally try and push onto the back of him. The penalty line here at the Nürburgring at the beginning of the Dottinger straight, so it does cost you quite badly. Now up the hill, Levicius actually retakes the lead against the Hyundai, and we're going to have another big surprise here, because as we head on to the Nordschleife, Couch driver there in second has himself a 1 second penalty, so both the cars in front with penalties to serve, and so this gives me the impetus and the reason to push even harder to try to get into range to capitalise on those penalties, which will be at the end of the lap. So we have a good 6 minutes or so, or even less than that, maybe about 5 minutes of trying to gain onto the back of them, which isn't going to be easy. These guys have been very quick in this race and the previous one as well. As we head towards the slowest corner on the circuit here, this awkward left-hander, down to 51 miles per hour through there. As we head then down the hill, this was my worst sequence of the circuit, towards Flugplatz. No, not Flugplatz, this is Plantsgarten. And coming through here actually quite nicely this time around. Green flag's waving, not sure what's happening there. Probably something on the previous lap. Levicius in the lead, 2.7 ahead, so he's actually got into some clear air and just managed to pull away. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to capitalise on his 0.5 second penalty. However, it's a different scenario here for Couch driver in second. We are 6/10 off and he's got a 1 second penalty, so this one should be a slam dunk overtake. As we go through Galgenkopf, nearly flat out all the way through, which is just quite bonkers to be honest. And here is the penalty line. Let's see how this one goes as our Couch driver serves the penalty. As we say, it's going to be an easy overtake. The penalty line really does kill you quite badly here. Against Levicius, he only served a 0.5, but we are going to gain quite a lot. The gap was 2.9. It's coming down 1.7, 1.6. And no, I'm not going to be close enough to overtake, but that does help in the grand context of the race. I'm going to be a lot closer, and who's to say that he might not get another penalty? Into the pit lane we go, switching over to a fresh set of mediums on the Ferrari Audi. Great job by the Ferrari Audi team there. As we exit the pit lane in third place. Now this was a really close race, I must say, as we are 1.7 or about 2 seconds off the lead, with fourth and fifth in very close attention just behind. So the top five, let's say, within 5 seconds, and that's a pretty good battle, I think it's fair to say. Now coming through turn 3 and 4 as we drop down the hill. This one is going to go down to the wire, with Levicius now back to second up against the Italian, who's had a good lap there to regain the lead. I just have a lapse of concentration there. I just forget how to drive. I forget what that corner is. I kind of go straight on, losing a handful of time, which I can't really afford to do because the talent pool is rather high in this one. And so we can't afford to make many mistakes. Couch driver right onto the back of me now. If you take a look at the track map at the bottom right of the screen, you might just see the leader there making a mistake through the hats and back section, and he's going to surrender the lead for the time being, and also a couple of seconds. So once again, back to about 2.6 off the lead. They've been agonizingly within sight, and that word was agonizing to try to say. As we go through floodplats, flat out through here, 170 miles an hour. And, you know, in my GT4 car in real life, we're definitely braking into that one with a minimum speed of about 190 kilometers an hour. Now, Couch driver there with the superior straight line speed and the slipstream goes through into third, and, you know, that makes me think that probably wouldn't have happened if I didn't make that mistake through the chicane at the tail end of the Grand Prix loop. But alas, it has happened. We can't really do much about it other than try to re-overtake him, which is the idea of racing, I guess. And then once I've overtaken him, ideally I'll try and overtake the other two in the lead. Now, coming through, Adnau Forst, carrying the speed nicely, 2.8 to the lead, and 1.5 seconds to the car behind. And this sequence here, this part of the track was clearly my weakest, and Couch driver actually having a bit of a nightmare as well. This is going to put me right onto the back of him. And it's an interesting dynamic here with Group 1. I mean, Group 1 is always an interesting class, of course, because it has such a weird variance of machinery with, you know, Couch driver driving the weird VGT car. Then we have real life race cars with the LMP1s, which I'm driving. Also the Group C cars, so there's just a weird amalgamation of different cars all bundled together in this same class. And I mean, good luck to anyone trying to use a Group C car in this race. I think that would be absolute suicide. Probably be a good 10 to 20 seconds off per lap. But if you can make it work, then fair enough to you. Anyway, third lap here, third and final lap. Going through this sequence, and it is, oh my god, the car is just so planted through it. It's unbelievable stuff. The crowd are going absolutely ballistic, all 10 of them, as we head down in towards this bit of the track, Brunchen. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's called Brunchen, this area. And then into Ice Curve. Let's hope that, you know, let's hope there's a bit more grip than ice through here this time. There is. Very much on the back of Couch driver here. This is a good position, I think, to be in as we head towards the end of the lap. The Dottinger Hurt, the long straight. Slipstream is possible, and actually second place with a mistake. The Italian dropping back. It looks like Levicius is going to be safe here unless he has a big penalty or forgets how to drive in this last minute. The Italian there looking vulnerable against Couch driver. From what I can tell, this Hyundai has very good straight line speed, and so this could be curtains for the Italian. But let's find out in just a moment. And weirdly enough, Levicius has made a mistake. He has kind of temporarily forgotten how to drive. And onto the back straight, I don't quite get the exit I would have liked. And look at that, Couch driver just goes off into the distance, teleporting himself away from me and leaving me little chance for the slipstream overtake here on the straight. But he's going to go up into second place. There's a bit of contact. Oh my goodness, that could have ended very badly. That could have been an airplane crash if I ever saw one. 1.5 seconds to the lead. This is going to be a very close finish indeed. Is there going to be one final twist in the tail as we head into the final braking zone at the end of the last lap? It's going to be very, very close. Look at this, 4 of us within 1.2 seconds. It isn't going to be another overtake, but it's going to be a rather satisfying 4th place after all of that. Wow, what a race. I know it's only 4th, but that was tiring. I am sweating. What a battle. Great combination, absolutely loved it. It just shows you if Gran Turismo come up with some good combos, you know, this game is amazing. But they just need to do it more often. So I think it's clear that's a really fun combination. The first time it's ever happened on Gran Turismo 7 as a daily race. Let me know your thoughts, guys. I'll catch you next time. Goodbye.